All right, good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the May 17th, 2022 meeting of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee. My name is Tony Emerson. I have the honor of chairing the committee this year, and the two other members would introduce themselves, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Neil Dobler, District 7.
Councilwoman Ortiz, I'll be proxying in for Mr. Lesser today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our April 19th meeting. I would entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval from Councilman Dobler and a second by Councilwoman Ortiz. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 3-0. All right, our next item is a parking plan update. That Mr. Copley, I take it, for that, or?
Probably, I think Ann is on.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Whoever has that, please speak up.
Let me start.
Okay.
The governing body has been provided a number of materials going back several years relative to the parking study. There was a staff recommendation that was made that included changes to the parking fees on Kansas Avenue, to remove the hoods on the meters, and basically to invest some money in the parking garages. At this tick of the clock, it's very uncertain based on comments that have been made at council meetings as to which direction the governing body wants us to go. So at this tick of the clock, I think it is a policy matter for the governing body in terms of, do they want us to put an RFP out for the sale of all or part of the garages? Do they want to move forward with implementing parking fees on Kansas Avenue? Do they want to remove the bags on the 100 block? I believe that item is on tonight. So that's basically where we are. We're looking to the governing body to provide us some direction as to where they want us to go, how we can best achieve the vision that the governing body has for parking in the downtown.
Any discussion on that?
Hannah went over the RFQ and the 5 different responses that we had last week. And if you want us, I'm sorry, last month when we had the Public Works Infrastructure Committee, this is simply the written version of what was presented to this committee last month. And there have been no changes relative to those 5 disparate responses that we had on the RFQ.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I could, maybe just for the record, talk about what we've got in front of us here. So essentially, we have, and all of these are just expressions of interest at this point, as I understand it. We have one proposal to potentially acquire the Uptowner garage. We have a proposal to potentially acquire the City Center parking garage and the Crosby parking garage. We have kind of an open-ended interest in exploring any or all options available. Not quite sure what that means. Actually, we have a couple of those. We have a expression of interest in outright purchase of 4 of the older parking garages without listing them. Not sure that one was acceptable or not. And then finally, again, kind of an open-ended interest in garage management or total acquisitions. I think the desire was to see if there was interest. The goal of this particular RFI was to see if there was interest,
Correct.
If there was companies that were capable of acquiring and or managing, if there was local interest. It appears, at least to me, that there is enough to move forward with something, and I'm not saying we should decide today on exactly what that something is, but I guess the alternative would have been maybe we didn't get any expressions of interest and that would have given us a direction. Is it your feeling, Braxton and city manager, that there's enough here that we can make a decision on how to move forward?
I believe there's information there to move forward with the next steps. I think the conversation is how's the governing body want to move forward? I think we have enough that we could start moving forward with the next step, but at this point, I think there's solicit guidance on how and where we want to go.
If I could continue. Right now, the only plan that we have in front of us is from 2017, is that correct? 2018, pre-COVID, I guess, is.
Yes, sir. That's the most current parking plan that's in place.
Okay. I know that.
And that was kind of put on hold because of the downtown construction of Kansas Avenue. And then we rolled right into the COVID. And so the plan never really got initiated or started, shall we say, as to when it was, after it was completed.
I know there's a lot of maybe bearing opinions on the council, so I'm not sure that, I guess I would suggest that perhaps this committee may not be the best place to make a decision. Maybe we can make some recommendations to the council at some point. I know there's an action tonight on, I think that was, when that was pushed to May, it was with the understanding that there would be some kind of updated parking study plus what we have in front of us. I think the desire tonight is probably going to be to push that off just a little bit longer, but we do need to, we need to move ahead with this. I think just my desire as a single council person is that we continue to operate a fee-based enterprise fund, not fund parking from the general fund. And we need to figure out how we're going to do that, whether it's selling all the garages, a few of the garages, not selling the garages, raising rates, whatever that means. We've got to get that figured out. So that doesn't give you a lot of guidance. I think we need probably discussion tonight at the council meeting, and hopefully we can come out of there with some sort of next step, whether that's remand everything back to this committee or a special committee or something else. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you, City Manager.
Yeah, Councilman Dobler and Chair and Ms. Ortiz, I believe the intent tonight from the city, or from the mayor, will be the call for a special session on May 24th, which will be a specific session to deal specifically with the parking, reviewing the parking plan, and then it will be a meeting as opposed to a workshop with the purpose that you guys will be able to take action, and that's the reason for a meeting. But I believe that'll be the recommendation of the mayor on the 24th, or for the 24th.
Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Councilwoman Ortiz, do you have any questions or comments?
I did, but I can hold them until either this evening or the May 24th meeting. I think it'd probably be better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If no one has anything else on this subject, I guess since we're going to talk about it tonight and then perhaps at a special meeting, I don't see any reason to beat the horse anymore here today. So
Just one
Go ahead.
clarification, if I could, please.
Please.
At last month's Public Infrastructure Committee meeting, there was a motion to approve the $1 million of repairs for the town site garage. I assume that given these latest developments and the upcoming discussion, that the direction to staff would be to hold tight on that and to not take any action.
Yeah, I believe at our meeting then on Tuesday night, which again, we just recommend to the council. And I believe the council then voted to not do anything right now, expend any funds on town site if I'm correct. Is that?
I think that was wrapped up in the discussion of the CIP, as I recall.
Right.
That's exactly the sentiment, I believe, at this point.
Yep,
So.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, well, the next item then is the Resolution 6833, drainage correction projects. And Mr. Copley.
Correct, that's my item. 25 years ago, the governing body passed this resolution to allow for drainage correction projects. This was back in the day when any individual project had to be approved by the governing body. This resolution basically carved out an exception that did not require specific governing body action for DCP or drainage correction projects of $100,000 that affected 3 or more people. And there's a formula in terms of how to rank those in terms of prioritizing one versus another. In the past 25 years, costs have gone up. It's now difficult to do a meaningful drainage correction project for $100,000. Also, there have been cases that we've had where we have 2 property owners and not 3 property owners that are impacted by a drainage issue. So basically, what this resolution would do would be to increase that program from $100,000 to $300,000 for a single drainage correction project, and to reduce from 3 affected property owners to 2 affected property owners to allow us to go in and do projects. Now, obviously, it would be not to exceed $300,000, so if there's a $50,000 drainage correction project I could do for 2 people or 4 people, we obviously would take the least costly approach to it. But this is to increase from 100 to 300 and to reduce from 3 affected property owners to 2 affected property owners. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you have.
Yeah, Mr. Copeland, I guess my first question would be is how often, I understand the 100,000 is a pretty significant constraint, but 300, I mean, tripling it seems like a big jump all at once. How often are they that? I mean, what's the average project, I guess? How often would, like for instance, would 200,000 be enough most of the time, or?
It varies. Sometimes we're able to do one for 50. Sometimes we're right at 100. I had one that was closer to 200 that obviously I could not do as a DCP project. I had to do that under a stormwater improvement, under a completely different program. This program is funded to the tune of $300,000, typically funded to the tune of $300,000 a year. So that would allow for 3 projects if you do at 100,000.
Or one at 300?
Correct.
Questions from the body or from members of the committee? I did have a request. Mr. Ledbetter had asked before the meeting if he could speak on this, and as a committee chair, I would allow that. So, Mr. Ledbetter, if you could please come up to the microphone there so we can hear you.
Thank you, board members. Let me clarify, I did not understand this was just a complete $300,000 item for a whole year. But that being said, I have always, in my public comments over the years, with whatever entity was government related, requested at all times transparency. And when I see amounts increase, and it doesn't matter what the reason is to me, from 100,000 to 300,000, that concerns me about oversight of government, about public knowledge of where these monies are going, and I'm not speaking to anybody in this room, I'm talking about what could eventually be arbitrary admin decisions without the scrutiny of the board. And I would hope this does not apply, it doesn't appear it would, but I can certainly ask the question. Does this apply to contracts with consulting as well on any of these projects? Does this amount include any design or consulting that was done with that project? Those are good questions. But back to the point, my concern has been, over the last year and a half especially, that I saw what appeared to be multiple contracts being signed by managers without any oversight, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I didn't see a vote by council members or board members to approve these amounts. I see no problem with taking this to the council and having it approved if it's over 100,000. I don't know of any entities in this state that allow these kinds of improvements, not just this, but contracts over 100,000. I think Lawrence has the highest level, but even Wichita and a number of Johnson County cities require anything at 50,000 above to go before the council. And I know that we have those kind of rules with the Metropolitan Transit Authority, which is a much smaller budget. I know that the county commission, which we're not, but they're part of this community, scrutinizes much smaller amounts. And I've experienced that on the Parks and Rec board. And so I am very concerned anytime I see something like this raising numbers, especially this dramatically. So I'm in opposition to this. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Ledbetter. Mr. Dober, Councilman Dober, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So let me ask a couple of questions, make sure I understand this. Right now, anything 100,000 or over has to be in the CIP. Is that correct? That's what it says here.
I'll defer to Steve. I think it's any capital project or program has to be in the CIP.
Okay, well, the language here says projects costing over 100,000, now 300,000, which otherwise meet the requirements, blah, 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 for inclusion in the city's adopted capital improvement plan. I guess my point is, at some point, this is being voted on by the council.
Yes, sir.
The program is every year voted on by the governing body.
Right. This just allows you to respond to, I mean, the drainage correction program is meant to respond to smaller drainage correction problems that come up during the year.
And to do it in a timely fashion. As part of the DCP program, we also put out, every 3 years, we put out to bid contract services by contractors so that we have a pool of contractors available so that I don't have to go through this formal process of putting a bid out. I can basically run through the numbers to see which of the contractors is going to be the lowest responsible, and I'm able to make that offer to them to be able to jump on it. So this program on the DCP is intended to be one that is nimble, to be able to adroitly go in and fix drainage correction problems.
And this allows you to do that more effectively?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I agree with Mr. Ledbetter that transparency is important, but I also know that from the number of emails and phone calls I get from residents, they appreciate responsiveness every bit as much. And I think having been in this position in the past, being able to respond to those drainage issues in a timely manner is extremely important. So I will be in support of this.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Braxton, are some of these emergency drainage correction projects?
Well, if you're one of the property owners affected, you believe that it rises to the level of an emergency.
Let's try this again, Braxton. How many of these are emergency situations where you need to get on it immediately?
My preference in terms of providing the highest level of customer service is any of these that come in need to be done as quickly as possible.
Okay. So does this, with us not adopting this, will this, I'm trying to answer this so you don't come back with selling this to me. I just want to make sure that Has this been hard for you? Has this been a hindrance for you?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to be able to be responsive to when it's two individuals as opposed to three or more, as well as to be able to exceed the $100,000 to give me more tools in my toolbox to be able to address these. Now, obviously, the DCP program is included in the CIP. As every year as we put the CIP in front of you, we put down what our proposed projects are under that program. So in terms of transparency, I believe that it's still there. We have the city website. Any project that we create that's under a program goes out on that city website, including the budgetary amount.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you, Mr. Copley. I guess I need to disclose that my company does have a contract under this. I think we've done one project in the last 3 years or something. We were offered a project a couple of years ago. We were too busy. So just because, I think it's done very transparently, but just because I can be seen as having a conflict, I'm going to abstain voting on this at the committee level and at the council level as well. So that's being said, though, I would take a motion.
I'll move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval on this resolution. Do I have a second? We have a second from Councilwoman Ortiz. Any further discussion? If not, then all four, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm going to abstain. So this will be 2 to 0 to 1, I guess. So, okay. The next item is,
I believe this would be my item as well.
yes, 50/50 sidewalk, please, Mr. Copley.
At the direction of the committee, we went back and took a look at the existing program and basically added a component in terms of how to provide a benefit to LMI, qualified LMI people. So what you have in front of you is the draft 50/50 sidewalk repair program. This would allow for the city to pay for the homeowner's share of the 50% of the cost of the program. So in other words, if you're a qualifying LMI, this would allow for the city to pay for the entire replacement cost for that individual. It would be set up as if the costs exceed $1,000, it would be set up as a forgivable loan that could be forgiven after 5 years. If it's under $1,000, that would be considered a grant, and so there would be no repayment obligation, nor would there be a mortgage filed against the property. And with that, I'll stand for any questions that you would have.
Any questions from the committee on this? Mr. Dober, please go ahead. Councilman Dober.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So explain that again. If the project is, if it's $1,000 sidewalk and you don't qualify, the city's paying $500, you're paying $500.
That is correct.
If you qualify,
The city would pay the $1,000.
they're going to pay it all. If it's over $1,000,
It's 1,001. The city would pay it all if you qualify LMI.
right?
It would be set up as a forgivable loan. So if you continue to reside in the house for 5 years, then we would take a soft second mortgage against that to secure it. And at the end of 5 years, the mortgage would be removed.
Okay.
If you sell the house during that 5-year period, then the city would be paid back for the 50% cost of it.
Got it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Braxton, do you have approximately how much these sidewalks cost? Is it within that range from 500 to 1,000?
Right now, we are seeing $10 a square foot. So for a 5-foot wide sidewalk, you're looking at $50 per lineal foot. And I'll defer to any of the contractors in the room if they think that my cost estimate is reasonable. About $10 to $12 a square foot is what we're seeing. So that would be, to make it easy, let's say it's $50 a lineal foot. That would be 200 feet of sidewalk, would be $1,000.
Okay.
Go ahead, please, Mr.
Thank you.
Councilman Doble.
And typically, you're looking at a couple of panels usually where the sidewalk's kicked up or a tree roots under it, maybe 3 at the most. So you're talking
Yeah.
10, 15, 20 linear feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Each panel would be approximately 5 by 5.
Yeah, so probably under the 1,000 in most cases would be my guess. Thanks.
So then my next question is, do they have to repair the whole sidewalk or just what's buckled up?
Typically, our notice would only be for the trip hazards, so basically a separation of elevation of an inch or greater. That's what we would go in and cite the property owner for, and at the time that we cite them, we would also provide them with the information relative to the program.
Okay, I received, I was at a graduation party and I had a 93-year-old lady that got a letter, received a letter. And we did put it on hold, but she was concerned, and this brought a question to my mind. She was concerned how much, because they said if it's not done within this time frame, she'd have to go before the court. How much time do we give them?
I believe the letter is 60 days. I don't have Vince here, but I want to say it's 60 days in the letter. Obviously, if the property owner is working to get a contractor, we will work with the property owner on that. And, okay? So if, for example, all the contractors are tied up and the property owner tells us, look, I have talked to a contractor and it's going to be 3 months before they can get out on site, our goal is to solve the problem, not to punish property owners.
I know that's the goal, but sometimes that slips through the cracks and it hits the people that we don't really want it to hit. It hits those that, the elderly, you know, especially if they sit on that ladder, which she's right there with that time frame. So you're saying they have to go out and they have to find the contractor, is that correct?
Not if they participate in this program.
Or participate in the program? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So the city, under this 50/50 program, the city is the one that engages the contractors. We put it out through bid. We select 2 contractors. Our program is typically funded at $100,000 a year for the 50/50 program. And then the city would engage the contractor to do the work once the property owner has paid for their half of the anticipated cost of the sidewalk removal, or under this revised policy would allow for either a grant or a forgivable loan for the property owner's portion if they qualify as LMI.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Mr. Copley, so I guess kind of in a follow-up to Councilwoman Ortiz's question. So a person gets a notice in the mail. After that, they can apply for the program. Is applying for the program enough to stop the 60-day clock?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is there some mechanism the city has for knowing that, or the people have to go to court or something to let them know?
I'll defer to Mark. Honestly, I can't remember if we turn these over to code compliance, if they're not complying, or if we as Public Works would work with legal in terms of some kind of enforcement mechanism. I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I guess I just want to make sure of that, because I've seen people get in this loop where they're getting cited and they're waiting for some program, or they think they've done everything, but meanwhile this is still going on over here. I want to call almost the civil penalty loop. It almost seems separate from actually getting the problem fixed. But I really like what you guys have done here, because so often a problem like a sidewalk almost criminalizes being poor or not having as much the resources to fix things. So I really like this. I really like the thinking you guys have done here in this program. So I would be in support of this. And is this no, this is just a revision. This is not anything you need us to vote on, is it?
No, this can be implemented administratively. Obviously, this issue came up last month, and we promised you that we would look into the matter and we'd come back to you with a proposed policy that would have in it a LMI component. So that's where we are. This can be done administratively. We would like to have some guidance in terms of if the committee believes that this is the policy direction that we should go. We are limited to $100,000 a year in terms of funds that are available.
Chair.
Go ahead, please, Councilman Doble.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to follow up on that part, on the financial part of it. So we've had it at 100,000 for a few years. Do we spend that 100,000 every year?
No, sir. If you'll remember the last committee meeting, we reported to you that over the past 5 years, we had $150,000 of unspent funds in the 50/50 sidewalk program. And we have, since that time, directed finance to close out each of those programs that had remaining funds in it and sweep the $150,000 back into the CIP to be programmed by the governing body as part of the next CIP approval process.
Yeah, I agree with the chair. I think this is a great start. I think it addresses some of the issues that we've had. I guess at budget time, I guess next year's CIP, since we've passed it at this point, we hopefully will have some data to understand whether that needs to be upped a little bit.
Correct. My thought is we'll know how much we've spent from out of the 2023 CIP and then whether we have a number of requests that are out there that are on the waiting list because we've spent what we had approved in the 2023 CIP by you guys.
So, number one, I'm definitely in support of this, and number two, I appreciate the quick turnaround on the suggestion was made last month, and we have a policy this month. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager?
Chair and committee, probably a year and a half ago was the first effort by staff to come up with a way to implement the 50/50 program that was economically beneficial to LMI residents. And so there was an attempt a little over a year ago. That plan was reviewed and looked at. There wasn't a lot of support for it because it did require a lot of legwork and stuff on the part of the community member. This program here, I think, is a very good effort by staff to do a very economically and feasible way for the 50/50 program to be implemented and to benefit LMI residents in the city of Topeka. So I would encourage the committee to support this as well.
Councilwoman Ortiz, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I too would like to say this looks good. I just want to make sure that the communication is clear that about the 50/50 sidewalk, because the letter I've seen, I don't believe that was clear to that individual who will meet these guidelines. And it would have been nice to see the guidelines as well attached to this, but I'm sure she'll meet them. So I'll go back and have a discussion with her. But we just need to make sure that education and communication is clear. Thank you.
And that letter probably would have been received under the current program, not the new one.
It was April the 4th. So you're saying it would be under the old one?
Yeah, what's currently in place. So yeah, so it would change. Everything would change.
Just so you know, planning staff has put together a very simple half-page flyer that basically says if you're interested in the 50/50 program, you may qualify for financial assistance from the city if you meet the 80% LMI criteria, and then they have that listed out for a 1, 2, 3, 4 person family in a little table form. If you're interested, please contact the planning department.
Braxton, with all due respect, I haven't received that notification.
No, ma'am, because this policy is a draft policy. I'm just telling you that planning has created that form.
Braxton, I'm looking forward to receiving that notification. Even though I don't have any sidewalks, I'm looking forward to receiving that notification. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So I guess everyone here has expressed, do you need anything formal on this, or can you kind of read that we all said that?
No, I think we can read the room fairly well.
Okay.
We will proceed with adopting this policy.
And I do have one more question, Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
So my lady, that her letter was addressed in April, will she be able to get on, or is there a cutoff date, or we're going to start it as, how are we going to do this?
I think it would be appropriate to start it as of June 1st.
So since she got the letter in April, that doesn't qualify her?
She would need to recontact Public Works once we get the new policy in place. I would encourage her to contact Public Works, and then we can reevaluate that. I don't think there's a big reason why we wouldn't move a project or a letter from the old program to the new program if it's going to be beneficial.
Just making sure,
And
City
then-
Manager. Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll do we'll get with Communications Department and put out information as to that.
And the reason why I say that, not only her, but there's other people that are waiting because they can't afford it, or they're confused. I mean, I'm serious. We have people waiting. I've heard that in the NIA.
Councilwoman, I think we lost you. Okay, well, you're back. We lost you there for a second. Okay, of course, she's very good at staying still. I saw a magician do that. Maybe our, Councilwoman, I don't know if you can hear us, but we lost you there. Oh, okay, you're back. We did not hear the end of that.
I'm sorry, I keep freezing up. What I was saying is there are people waiting, and they haven't done anything because they can't afford it. So I'm sure that once this is publicized, they will step forward. But I know 4 of them from Oakland and IA that have been waiting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, the next item is the proposed revisions to the culvert replacement program. And Mr. Copley,
I believe this would be my item as well.
3 for 3.
So again, in response to the discussion that we had at the Public Infrastructure Committee meeting last month, we have created a revision to the existing driveway culvert policy to again instill in it a LMI feature to allow for, under the existing policy, city staff will install the culverts, but the culvert needs to be purchased by the property owner. This would allow for qualifying LMI residents to have the city pay for the culvert. And again, it would be, if the cost is under $1,000, it would be considered a grant. If it's over $1,000, it would be a forgivable loan. At the end of 5 years, the mortgage, soft second mortgage, would be removed from the property. If the property owner sells during that intervening 5-year period, the city would be repaid out of the sales proceeds of the house for the cost of the culvert.
So basically the same financial assistance offered under the 50/50 sidewalk program. I mean, it wasn't 50/50, but a similar deal.
Correct.
Okay. Questions, Councilwoman Ortiz? You're still muted. And you're, okay, go ahead now.
Thank you. Braxton, this is long and overdue. Me and you've had this discussion. I want to know, why do we have to use the piping that we use? Why can't we use this other piping that's much cheaper and that's used across the state?
Actually, I will ask you to focus in on the pipe sizing requirements on the third page, and you will see that reinforced concrete pipe, corrugated metal pipe, high-density polyethylene pipe, or polypropylene pipe can be used. I'm not aware of any other commonly used types of pipe. The polypropylene and HDPE would need to be approved specifically by the Public Works and Utilities Director on a case-by-case basis, and that's because there are some installations of HDPE pipe that would set it up for failure because you don't have enough cover over the pipe to be able to have the rock envelope that's actually providing the structural integrity because the pipe doesn't have any. There would be other cases where polypropylene pipe may work out to be cheaper than HDP, than a RCP or CMP. Right now, that may not be the case, but obviously we've allowed for the greatest number of possible solutions, and it'll be based on the engineering and the cost as to what makes the most sense.
Go ahead, please, Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Chair. So the pipe material is the same regardless of whether the person qualifies for this or not? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I think that may answer that question. Because if they qualify, the city's paying for the pipe.
Correct.
Okay.
And the city would be making the determination, but otherwise it's up to the property owner, subject to what makes sense in terms of the engineering, right?
Thank you.
And I guess, Mr. Copley, could we, I mean, I know who to call, but the average person who has a culvert pipe, they get a letter in the mail or something from the city saying you need to replace. How would they know to investigate these alternate pipes, and how would they know who to talk to?
Typically, if WPC is the one that's generating the letter, there's going to be a WPC staff person that's going to be listed as the contact. That would be the person that the property owner would talk to.
So, okay, thank you for that. But I guess when you're talking earlier about the use of HDPE or polypropylene PP pipe, you said in instances where there's not enough, which is, I think MoDOT, uses this under their, well, and so does the FAA under, you can use this under runways and such.
I was talking about HDPE, where the rock envelope is what provides structural integrity.
Right.
Triple wall polypropylene pipe, you're absolutely right. There are many state departments of transportation and airport authorities that will allow that under their runways.
Right. And I guess my question is, can we make it just black and white that if you meet these coverage requirements, you can use it, so it's not, somebody's not having to get a hold of someone and argue the case or the merits of it, or?
No, because the pipe diameter is absolutely going to govern the depth of that rock envelope in terms of the structural integrity. So that is going to vary between a 15 and 18 and 24 and 36 in terms of what that is.
Right, and I'm sorry, I meant the cover. If you have 12-inch minimum cover, you can use polypropylene. I mean, can we just?
But again, that's going to be governed by the pipe diameter in terms of what your cover needs to be. We can.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk offline because I brought some literature.
We can go into much greater detail, but this policy is permissive to allow any of the 4 pipe types.
Well, two are permitted, 2 you have to get special permission for, and I just worry that'll be a step because those are cheaper. I mean, PP pipe, I checked a couple weeks ago, and is half of what aluminized type 2 CMP is right now.
Yes.
And installation, it's a heck of a lot cheaper. So it would save the city money. So anyway, okay.
I can tell you that the current utilities director and public works director absolutely would have no problem allowing for polypropylene pipe.
So what's stopping it, I guess?
Because I am in a temporary position as the public works director. I feel that a decision relative to the pipe type used in the right-of-way should have the agreement and the knowledge of the city engineer and the Public Works Director. So I'm not prepared at this point to say wholesale, make that change. I think that that should be a discussion between City Engineer, Public Works Director, and Utilities Director in terms of the pros and cons of each of those materials. This policy is permissive to allow for the addition of other types.
I agree. I'll tell you, we're all temporary. I had a guy that worked for me for 15 years. He died this weekend from a stroke, 58 years old. So you don't, we're all temporary. So,
Understood.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm great with these guidelines. I would like to, like I said, I actually brought some literature I can give to you here today on the other pipes. But any other questions? Councilwoman Ortiz, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can respect Braxton's position, but I still want to make sure that we push this forward with that information so that whoever comes along, let's have that conversation and make it happen. I'm grateful for the change in policy. It helps the low to moderate income. But I'm still kind of sour with the thought that I had to pay full price for mine, and I have to pay for stormwater on my bill, and because I don't have a curb, or I'm paying. I still have to pay for this, and I think this is a part of maintenance. But I do appreciate this document that has been brought forward, because it is long and overdue. But I won't stop saying that people in certain areas across the city, they feel the same way that I do, that they're paying for something that they're not getting. And how do we make that happen? I don't know. I'll continue to push for that. But if they have to pay for it, we need to make sure that we've looked at every single avenue, and we need to make sure that it's as low as possible. Because I've paid for not only mine, but I've paid for others because they can't afford it. We can't get in and out of our driveways without it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right. So I think just like the last one, you can see we're in support of the changes. The next item is the update on the firm City Hall sidewalk repairs. Is that Mr. Tryon?
So you should have a copy of a memo in front of you. The City Hall sidewalk to the north side of the building is an area that we've known for some time. Has had some issues with the deterioration of the concrete. We had hoped that we could make the repairs in conjunction with some other repairs to City Hall. However, this spring we had complaints. We received a complaint of a tripping hazard from a resident who was visiting City Hall on April 29th. At the same time, when we inspected it, we saw that the brick inlays that were part of the sidewalk were raising above the level of the sidewalk. There were also issues on the west side of the sidewalk where the concrete from the sidewalk meets the driveway into the City Hall employee parking lot. Based on the grade, the gaps in the concrete, we felt that it was important for the safety of everyone visiting City Hall to go ahead and make repairs to that sidewalk, replacing those brick inlays with some stamped concrete for safety and for better durability going forward, but still preserving the look of the sidewalk that's being replaced.
Any questions for Mr. Tryon?
Thank you.
You don't need, yours forming is right, you don't need anything from us on this?
Correct, because this is an emergency repair.
Okay.
The emergency funds would be used going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Tryon. Are there anything anyone else wants to bring up or discuss? Councilwoman, you good?
Yes, I just want to know when the Culvert policy goes in effect as well, because I have 1269 Republican who has been waiting since 2017, and I want to help her get on that list. Thank you.
Mr. Copley?
I believe June 1st would be reasonable to give staff an opportunity to work with planning staff, who will be the ones making the determination relative to whether the person qualifies as LMI or not, and to have us be able to provide line staff with the information relative to the different pipe materials and with the program, and then to identify funding. The culvert policy is limited to 15 culvert replacements a year. That basically is a $15,000 that we would need to find out of
Yeah,
operating.
20 in here. 20.
20? So 20 a year, that would basically be 20 times 1,000, $20,000 that we would need to identify out of operating funds. Potentially, that would be if everyone were LMI that qualified for it.
Thank you. All right, seeing no further business before us, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.